I remember when Newcastle announced Castore as their kit supplier back in 2021, and the overwhelming response was,
"Who?"
This was a brand that came absolutely out of nowhere. They've only been around since about 2015, but they've gone on to sign deals across a huge variety of sports, supplying major clubs and some international teams. But despite making it to the top of the footballing pyramid, their weak designs and horrendous quality control has led to them losing a number of major contracts over the last few seasons. One contract they've lost was that of Newcastle. In 2021, after the takeover of Newcastle by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, fans were happy to see Mike Ashley's 14 years of tyranny come to an end. The demand for the shirts increased so much that Castore couldn't keep up. Fans were faced with long delays after the kits had already been purchased. The shirts themselves were prone to being torn easily, which was also an issue for some of their other clothing too. And Castore had issues fulfilling orders, which included sending 4 shirts when only 1 was ordered, and sending shirts with the wrong names on. Castore seemed to think that Trippier is Joel Linton. This deal was meant to last for another 2 years, but Newcastle cut ties due to so many fan complaints and switched to Adidas in 2023. Their previous deal with Castore was worth about £5 million a year, while the new deal with Adidas is worth a reported £40 million. Judging by how well the Adidas shirts had been received, this was a very good move. Before this deal was even signed, Rangers had a number of issues with Castore too. Fans had complained about the poor quality of their kits and the printing errors since the 2020 season when this deal began. While Newcastle players had few complaints, the same couldn't be said for Aston Villa's players. Their so-called wet look kit from the 23-24 season was hated by the players, as the shirts would stick to them as they got sweaty. This was great news for anyone that wanted to see John McGinn in a wet t-shirt contest, but the women's team in particular hated the kits. It was reported that during a pre-season friendly, they wore the training kit during a match with Villarreal instead of the new shirts. Castore said they would fix the issue and supplied new shirts in December. Bear in mind, this is an issue that had been reported since the pre-season all the way back in August, but these new kits didn't solve the wet look problem. By early January, Aston Villa followed in the footsteps of Newcastle and struck a new deal with Adidas. Bayer Leverkusen had been supplied by Castore since 2022. Problems with their kits were common during this season, with the biggest issue being the crest just falling off, which happened to this fan on this home kit that was signed by the entire team. Luckily for him, the club did offer free crest reattachments if you brought the kits to their stores. The demand for Leverkusen shirts increased massively during the 23-24 season, as Leverkusen would go on to finally win the Bundesliga for the first time in their history. As you can probably guess, Castore struggled to keep up with demand, again, and the away kit in particular was sold out for weeks at a time. These issues also persisted into the 24-25 season as well. For the club's fans, not only is this very annoying, but the club itself is missing out on vital revenue on the back of an incredible season. With their recent success, Leverkusen were in a much better position to bargain for new deals with better kit suppliers. The contract with Castore was meant to run until 2027, but have cut ties after just 2 seasons. And guess who their new kit supplier could be? The German giants Adidas already supplied the majority of Bundesliga teams, so this could be another one to add to the list. Another Premier League team that suffered with Castore's poor quality was Wolves. Their deal started in 2021 and ended in 2024. Their shirts were once again prone to being torn very easily during matches, and in one instance, some of the matchday shirts had the Wolves badge on upside down. So instead, Wolves struck a new deal with Sudo. Apparently, Sudo is an offshoot of Levi Merchandising, a company owned by Fosun International, which is the conglomerate that owns Wolves. They probably should have gone with Adidas though, as the new kit is definitely not worth £80. One team that didn't get the memo about Castore was Everton, as they struck a deal with them for the 24-25 season. Things got off to a pretty poor start, as in a pre-season friendly, Everton suffered from the same issue that plagued Leverkusen, as the badges were seen falling off the shirts. Castore has been described as a championship supplier punching well above their weight. In the UK, you'll tend to see some kit suppliers such as Hummel, Macron and Joma that tend to stick to the championship and below. Castore's first big win was partnering with Andy Murray back in 2019, who then became a shareholder, and from here things began to snowball. In 2020 and 2021, Castore would be the supplier of Rangers, Wolves, Newcastle, rugby union side Saracens, the McLaren Formula 1 team, and international cricket teams like England and South Africa. With all of these new deals, you would think Castore would up their game and increase their production volume or quality control. As the likes of Newcastle, Aston Villa and Leverkusen saw the demand for their kits increase, Castore simply failed to keep up. This could be forgiven back in 2021, but Castore still have these same issues in 2024 with Bayer Leverkusen. While they may have lost some contracts for Premier League sides, they still supply a number of teams in the lower leagues, which sounds like the level they should be operating at. Things aren't looking so rosy for McLaren F1 either. With Castore being the new supplier, the Trustpilot score has taken a pummeling, with orders not being fulfilled or taken weeks upon weeks to arrive. And of course, the fit and quality of the merchandise is an issue. These McLaren shirts are prone to losing their logos after just a few washes, and this issue was present on the Red Bull merchandise as well, as Red Bull became the latest F1 team to be supplied by Castore. In 2024, the team signed a contract extension worth $200 million. I'm assuming Castore doesn't care about losing contracts with Premier League teams, as one contract with Red Bull can cancel all of them out. Castore have landed a few deals with international cricket teams, as their first major deal was struck with the West Indies in 2019. One of the West Indies' on-kit sponsor was Sandals Resorts. In 2021, this deal came to an end, and Castore weren't able to supply new shirts in time for a one-day international match in January 2022, so the West Indies had to wear shirts, but with pink tape covering the Sandals logo. Unsurprisingly, in 2023, the West Indies did not renew their deal and would sign with Macron instead. Bonjour. The England cricket team has seen a fair few errors too. During the 2023 World Cup, their shirts featured different fonts for the England text on the front. These shirts were replaced a few days later, but the replacements featured another printing error. This time, the fonts for the player names were different on some shirts. You just have to outline the fonts, lads, it's not that hard. South Africa were supplied by Castore, but this ended after just a few years, which ended in 2023. They didn't renew their deal and instead signed with Lotto. Honestly, I had no idea Lotto even made cricket gear until now. But to fill the void, Castore have snapped up the New Zealand international cricket team instead. Castore do have some decent looking shirt designs, but I would say most of their designs are pretty bad or just quite boring. When they first made a shirt for Rangers, some fans thought it was plagiarised, as it looked very similar to the previous season's design. I do find their logo looks awful from a distance as it's so busy, and is it just me, or do they have no brand presence or recognition? I don't think I've ever seen anyone wearing their clothing that isn't a football shirt or a piece of teamwear. I wonder how many people even know the slogan for Castore. Apparently their slogan is, "Better never stops." Are they saying that these are better than Adidas or Nike? They've had years to make these products better, and so far they've struggled to address a number of issues. Now that my search history is ruined from searching Castore so much, I keep getting this advert. It's basically a glorified slideshow of athletes and teams they sponsor, showing a number of them raising trophies, including Bayer Leverkusen. Interesting timing when you consider that Leverkusen have already announced they will be terminating their contract. Unlike a typical sports brand, Castore didn't get started by setting up shop. It would seem that they got the investors on board first to raise capital, so it would explain why they didn't open a physical location until 2023, as they started as an online venture in 2016. Over the years, the funding from investors has steadily increased, and I'm kind of sorry to say that the brand is still growing. Castore's valuation hit £1 billion after their latest funding round in late 2023. In a press release, one of the founders says that they have had some issues recently, but unlike Nike and Adidas, they were able to move quickly to fix the issues. This was just 2 months before Aston Villa terminated their contract because they didn't fix the issue with the wet look shirts in 2023. Despite this hefty amount of investment, the quality and the supply chain of Castore is still terrible. They are clearly more bothered about growing the brand, reaching a global market, writing fluffy press releases and competing with Adidas and Nike, and haven't improved their mediocre designs, botched supply chain or low quality kits. It's so frustrating because this is a brand I really want to support. It's a new up-and-coming sportswear company that's based in Manchester, challenging the big players. It's a David versus Goliath story, but they just suck. The only thing they innovate at is finding new ways to cock things up. In early 2024, they struck a deal with Umbro, yes, that Umbro, allowing Castore to market and supply under the Umbro brand, and this will allow them to work with a number of Premier League and Championship teams that are supplied by Umbro, such as Bournemouth, Brentford, West Ham, Ipswich and Luton. So if you start seeing articles about how West Ham shirts are losing their badges, or Luton shirts being torn apart in the near future, you'll know why.